Okay, we're going to review the thematic essay, and I'm going to talk about what the essays um, will be about, okay, and how you will write it. So first of all, we're going to talk about the essay in January 2016. This is not your first time to write down thematic essay. So every time we say thematic, it means a theme, a topic. Okay, so we can see here we're going to have a theme. Let me give you a pen. Okay, so the theme is asking you to talk about the foreign policy, and it's especially talking about the policy on Latin America and the Caribbean. So first of all, we know foreign. It means outside the country. Foreign, outside the country. Okay, Latin America, South America, Latin America, South America. Okay, now we always put this this information in the box as your introduction, right? But remember, you cannot just copy word by word. You always like paraphrase. So let's see what does it require you to do. During the 19th and 20th centuries, the foreign policy goals of the United States led to many diplomatic and/or military actions involving nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. So here, when we are talking about diplomatic, we know it talks about, you are representing your country to negotiate with other country, right? And military, we know, sending armies. So, and when every time they talk about Latin America, it's about South America. Okay, and when you think about South America, you would think about like Mexico, all right? So those places, those countries. So the task, okay, the task. Task is easy. They always want you to write down two things, two policies, either diplomatic, like foreign policy, or military action. And you need to describe the historical circumstances. Every time when you hear me say historical circumstances, it means when, like like it talks about when, where, who, all right? It asks you to talk about the background, okay? The background. And then they want you to describe a goal, like the purpose. Why did America pass a policy? Or why did America do the military action? And the last one, they want you to discuss the success or the failure. But here, be careful, okay? Be very careful. They say and or. And or is easy because they don't want you to say both. So you can either talk about success or failure, all right? But if they want you to talk about the success and the failure, you have to be very careful. You need to talk about both, all right? So here, they always give you some ideas, some suggestions. Okay, so they say you may use any United States diplomatic or military action involving nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. And they even give you some suggestions like the Monroe Doctrine, like the Declaration of War against Mexico, and the war against Spain, anything. And definitely they say you are now limited to these suggestions. So here's the thing, you pick two, all right? You pick two and then you think about which one is better. So I would give you these two, all right? No matter it will be talked about again or not, all right? Maybe it will be used in DBQ essay, and you can definitely use my information as a outside information, all right? Again, first of all, we are going to write down introduction. And when we say introduction, we always paraphrase the information in the box. See that? Always paraphrase. So remember, they say during the 19th and 20th centuries, the foreign policy goals of the United States led to many diplomatic and or military actions involving nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. So if we want to paraphrase, we can just say throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, the United States has impacted a lot on Latin America, right? And then you needed to talk about two laws, two policies. So you can start to say in 1823, the Monroe Doctrine was issued. You know, issue? Issue is like a publish. Okay, publish. If you don't know the word, just read it many times. Issue, publish. Issue, publish. So it was published to do what? To prevent European involvement in Latin America. Okay, so prevent, again, what does prevent mean? It means to stop, right? Prevent means to stop. To stop what? To stop the European involvement. Okay, so it's kind of like trying to stop the European to step in. Okay, next one. Okay, the next one is going to talk about the naval blockade of Cuba. Okay, the naval blockade of Cuba. So thus, we know naval means navy, right? Navy. So why do we have sending the navy to block? You know, block, it's kind of like to stop, stop the one to coming out or getting in. Naval blockade of Cuba was carried out in 1962 by President JFK, you know, JFK, right? John F. Kennedy, trying to stop the spread of communism. If you remember that, it's also mentioned in global history. It's about the Cold War. Okay, so, and they try to prevent the nuclear war with the Soviet Union. Ta-da! Every time when you see the word, the old term Soviet Union, you know it's how to say, it's a Cold War terms, right? Because the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. Okay, so you're going to talk about the two cases, and that's how you're going to start your introduction. Remember, your introduction is always simple and easy. You're not going to talk a lot about the details, all right? And also, please remember, you don't have to memorize everything. What you need to do is just like to think about it as a story. And when you're writing, you just need to write a story, okay? Okay, and the last one, the last sentence. Both the Monroe Doctrine of 1823 and the naval blockade of Cuba in 1962 showed the U.S. interest in the region of Latin America. Again, we talk about the word a lot. Region means area, right? Region, area. Now, first of all, we are going to write down about Monroe Doctrine. You need to explain what it was about, why it was issued, and its impact, its influence. So what we are going to say is when, what, and where first. So when? In 1823, right? Where? Definitely in the United States. So you see, my sentence is very easy. The Monroe Doctrine was a policy of the U.S. introduced in 1823 during President Monroe's reign. You should know the word, okay? Reign means control, or you can even say under his presidency. So yeah, that one should be easy. And then you start to talk about, oh yeah, by the way, that's why, you know, they call it a Monroe Doctrine, because it's named after President Monroe. And the policy was to support Okay, you're going to talk about what it is. To support newly independent nations that broke free from the Spanish Empire. Okay, and you know, South America, there are a lot of South America colonies that belong to Spain. But just because of the weakness of Spain, so a lot of, like, you know, South American countries declared independence, right? So the policy was trying to support those countries. But again, the United States are not just trying to support the South Americans, okay? They're trying to also protect themselves. So that's why it claimed that if European countries try to further colonize any lands or get involved in any affairs in North or South America, the US would take action to stop Europeans' involvement. So here, take action. We know it's always a military action. Even the US is not really strong enough, okay? But by then, at least I think President Monroe was really doing a good job, okay? He kind of like made an announcement saying, yo, Europeans, stay in your land, all right? Don't come to North America or South America. Don't. Otherwise, I'm going to teach you a lesson. So after that, we need to talk about the purpose. Again, why did the US issue the policy? Again, it's not just helping the South America. You need to remember, if the South America was being colonized by Europeans, who would be influenced? Definitely North America, right? Definitely the United States. So, you know, every time when they do some policy, they always think about their interests first. Just to remember that. So let's see. The main goal of the Monroe Doctrine was to protect the United States national security. Did you see that? And ensure the newly independent countries would not be recolonized by European powers. The US wanted to keep the old world from interfering in the new world. Okay, we know when we talk about the old world, we always talk about the European countries. And the new world, we know it's about America, North and South America. Okay, so it's just kind of like, I want to keep you from interfering. That means coming, getting involved. In this way, the new independent nations in the Americas would provide the United States for new economic markets. Okay, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't finish. Provided the US with new economic markets and goods. I don't know why. Yeah, this is just like the sample from online. Okay, I'm just made a copy of it and change some words. Eventually, remember, finally, the US would gain the power needed to enforce the policy itself. It would also gain power and prestige, as well as the respect of Europeans. Okay. All right, one more about the influence. So although it was not an overnight success, that means although it was not a quick success, right? The Monroe Doctrine became one of the defining documents in United States foreign policy. It is one of the longest standing policies. Okay, when we say standing policy, that means the policy is always there. It was used by many presidents to police the Western Hemisphere. Remember here, police is a verb. You know, if you're policing someone, that means you're doing a police job and trying to like control them. Okay. Theodore Roosevelt, do you still remember the guy? Used his big stick policy to police the hemisphere. If you don't remember, let's just try to see this one. All right, this is Roosevelt's big stick. Okay, and you can see here the Caribbean Sea, and you can exactly try to see United States want to control and police both North and South America. All right. In the body paragraph 2, we're going to talk about the blockade of Cuba. So when I say blockade, you need to think about this picture. Okay. So there's a this is a metaphor, it's a United States kind of like a block, Cuba. Okay, block it, stop someone coming out or someone getting in. So again, just remember you're trying to tell me a story, and then you're just trying to analyze the story, and that's it. Okay, thematic essay is always about telling the story and explaining the story. So just try to remember a story, and you don't have to memorize word by word. You don't have that time, and I don't think it's necessary, because we really don't know what will be tested. All right, it's just like give you background information so you can build up. So let's talk about the story first. When, where, who. All right, so definitely I told you it's after, I'm sorry, it's after World War II, and it's during the Cold War, right? So I already said when and where, and it's between Cuba and the United States. Who, do you still remember? Which president? Yeah, JFK, Kennedy, all right? But why it occurred? Do you still remember? Maybe you forgot. Let's talk about it. First of all, the U.S. naval blockade of Cuba in 1962 was the height of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. When I say height, it's like that, right? It's like here, the climax. All right. Although no shots were ever fired between the U.S. and the USSR. Again, remember that means Soviet Union. The Cold War was a terrible period, fueled by fierce competition and great fear. So, do you still remember why we say Cold War? Cold War means like there's no war. Seriously, no war, no fighting happening between the two superpowers. Okay, no. But it was really scary because first of all, they were competing. Do you remember the Soviet Union sent a person to the moon, and then the Americans got mad. They were like, why it was the Soviet Union instead of us? So then they urged the government to spend a lot of money on exploring the outer space, on developing the technology. It's kind of like a competition, and also great fear. Because Soviet Union has nuclear weapons, so as United States. So those two superpowers both have nuclear weapons. Just think about if they were really mad at each other and they were really throwing the weapons to each other. Whoo! We're just going back to the Ice Age. The Earth is going to be destroyed. So it was the closest that the world has ever come to nuclear warfare. Okay, and the potential danger has been haunting until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Again, haunting. Okay, when I say, oh my gosh, the house is haunted, it's kind of like there's something always creeping on you, and you feel like, oh my gosh, is there something behind me? Like a ghost. That's called haunting. And here, it's a metaphor. It means, the danger is always there. It would never ever disappear. It would ever come to you. All right, until the fall of the Soviet Union. Woohoo! All right, now let's talk about the cause and effects. Did you see the picture here? Can you take a guess? So we will see the measles. Okay, so the measles is kind of very, very dangerous weapons. Okay, so you see, in the early 1960s, during the presidency of JFK, it was reported that Soviet Union was building missile sites in Cuba, just 90 miles off the shore of Florida. Whoa, hey, think about that. You know, Cuba is really close to United States, right? And you can see Soviet Union was building the missile sites, and you know, missiles are really powerful. So, and you see they were spotted, okay, by US spy planes. And they became the biggest problem Kennedy would ever face because they could cause the immediate destruction of major US cities. This one should be very easy for you to remember, to understand. Spot, you know, spot means like recognize or found. You can even say found. Okay, so you know it's like the U.S. spy planes. Ooh, found something, and they were like, "What? Are you kidding me?" The Cuba was building the missile sites for Soviet Union, right? So what do you think they should do? They should send army or they should invade Cuba? So see his reaction. His means JFK, President JFK. So President JFK, his reaction was to place a blockade, or you can say, or ring of ships around Cuba. Okay, remember they put like a ring of ships, okay, to around Cuba, trying to block it. However, it worked only. Let me erase it. It worked only because the Soviets backed down and turned their ships around. Okay, so that means like if the Soviet Union didn't do anything, actually the blockade was not really good. Okay, so let's see the effects. His bold response. Bold means brave. His brave response avoided nuclear war without invading Cuba. Within a few months, Kennedy publicly called for a changed relationship between the superpowers. So, you know, it's kind of like a President Kennedy say, hey, we need to talk. And this signaled a new willingness to communicate between the superpowers. Both realized the need for open communications to avoid the destruction of the Earth. Okay, so you see, they realize, you know, we need some open communication. We cannot just let the war start, and you know it would destroy the Earth. You know, destruction means destroy, means damage. The Cold War continued, but the absolute terror of the crisis was over. Although the Cold War would continue for almost 30 more years, Kennedy's goals for the blockade were accomplished. Okay, conclusion. So your conclusion is kind of like to talk about what you wrote. So you can say U.S. influence in Latin America began with the Monroe Doctrine of 1823. Over time, the U.S. grew to be more respected by European nations. Later, this doctrine was used by many American presidents to influence the region. During the early 60s, the naval blockade of Cuba of 1962 strongly showed the U.S. determination to ensure American national security. The blockade was a great success in preventing a nuclear war between the U.S. and the USSR. It also was a success of the Kennedy presidency. Both events signify that U.S. was an important force. Okay, so this is about the first essay, about the first thematic essay, okay? I hope that would help you a little bit and let you know how you are going to write. And the next one is January 2015, and this one is so different. This one's theme is about the government okay? And they're talking about the congressional legislation. So again, you need to read the information in the box. Throughout U.S. history, Congress passed legislation to address important social and economic issues. So when we say legislation, we mean laws. Okay? Address means solve. Solve the important social and economic issues, or we say problems. These laws have often had a significant impact on the US or on American society. And again, they're going to ask you to describe the background and also the impact, right? And you can see here, they give you a lot of advice. So again, you will pick two laws that influenced the United States. Okay, Missouri, fugitive, homestead, meat inspection, blah, blah. So which two are you going to pick? It's really up to you, okay? And here I'm going to give you two, which is all about it's all before the Civil War, and that's what you have learned. So maybe you should have some ideas. So again, introduction. Congress has always played a significant role in addressing, again, address means solve, okay? Solve the social and economic issues of the United States. Two specific pieces of legislation passed during the course of the U.S. history that had significant impacts on slavery and sectionalism. Okay, see here, sectionalism, we know it means you're thinking the states are more important than the country. Okay, that's why we call sectionalism, because section means part. They always think that their state is more important than the whole country. So we're going to introduce the Missouri Compromise and the Fugitive Slave Act. Both legislative pieces came from the theory of manifest destiny and the country's desire to expand itself. Do you still remember manifest destiny? Yeah, I know. You definitely remember. Manifest destiny is Americans believe that they were sent by God to expand their territory. Okay? All right, we are going to do the body paragraph 1. First, during 1900s, the U.S. began to increase its size by expanding its borders, mainly westward. Yeah, of course, because they start from the east, remember? The 13 colonies, and then they start to expand to the west. During the process of expansion, the state of Missouri wanted to be admitted into the Union as a slave state. So, okay, so when they're expand, Missouri is coming, but they say, hey, we want to come, but we want to keep our slavery. Do you agree or not? So by then, a lot of Northerners in the Union think that would be a threat. Threat could be, threat means danger. If someone is threatening you, it's kind of like they're trying to scare you, right? So they think it's a danger for the balance of slave to free states. What does that mean? Because, we have 11 free states, 11 slave states. Fortunately, luckily, okay, around the same time, Maine wished to be brought into the Union as well. So, I'm not sure if you know where Maine is. It's on the very top of the northeast. Okay, and you know what Maine is famous for? Their lobster, their seafood. Yummy. So Maine is here and the Missouri is here. So they both joined. And when they both joined, all right, fine. 12 free states and 12 slave states. They get a balance again, right? So due to this, the Missouri Compromise was drawn up, like drafted allowing Missouri to enter as a slave state and Maine as free, keeping the balance once again. So the legislation also included that a line would be drawn at the 3630 parallel. So I'm not sure if you still remember that. Like, this is a huge land and there's a line called 3630. Any land above is free. Any land below is slave. So you see here, slavery cannot exist in the territories anywhere above that line. Did you get that? The passage of this legislation, here, remember passage, it means passing, okay, passing. The passing of this legislation may have ended up placating the growing tensions between the North and the South over the issue of slavery, especially in the territories. But the passage of it predicted that the expansion of slavery would be an argumentative issue from now on. Okay, so here, an argumentative issue. The Missouri Compromise showed that the growing sectionalism was occurring between the North and the South, but it helped postpone the division between the North and the South. Okay, so again, we know it cannot stop the Civil War, but it just helped postpone. Body paragraph 2. The compromise between the North and the South also included Fugitive Slave Act. It also based on the westward expansion. So here we know it talks about Fugitive Slave Act. So when we talk about Fugitive Slave Act, okay, so it talks about the, fugitive. It means run away. Fugitive, run away. Okay. When California entered the Union as a free state, Henry Clay made a compromise that passed the Fugitive Slave Act. This law was very harsh. It gave the slave owner a lot of rights to run after their runaway slaves. And it also warned citizens in free states not to keep those runaway slaves because they would be in trouble. Do you still remember that law? We talked about that, right? It's kind of like, hey, you cannot keep the runaway slaves. You cannot keep the fugitive slaves, even you are in the North. Because, once the slave owners came to you or once the cops came to you, you will be in trouble. You will be put in jail, and that's not nice. How do you think the Northerners would react? Tell me. They would be so mad. So you see, the law definitely increased growing sectionalism, which finally caused the Civil War. Northern abolitionists were so mad about the passing of this act. Well, definitely they would be very mad, right? And this hatred, hatred means hate. Hatred that grew from the act would greatly contribute to the Union schism a decade later. Do you remember the word decade? Decade means 10 years, right? So it's like 10 years after the passing of Fugitive Slave Act, Civil War broke out. All right, after you finish all of that, we will do the conclusion. Again, we will talk about both these laws. Came from where? Came from the expansion of the U.S. and also came from the slavery. These legislative pieces caused Civil War that happened after 1860 with the election of President Lincoln. And right? Once after President Lincoln was elected, the southern states seceded. both increased tensions and issues that the US had to deal with later. Hey, we're done for those 2 years essays, okay? I'm just telling you, we don't really know which like which topic we will talk about, but just please study the video, and the video is going to give you a kind of like an idea. And also, please study the handout I gave you. Remember, I gave you a lot of like essays, right? There are like laws, and there are also about the Supreme Court cases. So I will wish you good luck. And yeah, that's it. Okay, and see you tomorrow.